This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. I have a great topic for you today. So, I'm going to talk about applying for asylum, who qualifies for it, with everything that's going on, at the border, with Title 42 ending. It is a topic of much conversation, and many of you need to understand the process in case this is something that you yourself you need to apply for, or you want to make sure that you understand all your options. So, asylum, it is one of those immigration benefits that frankly, it saves lives and it is completely legal to apply for it. Lately, in the past few years, there have been a negative type of perception of asylum just because many asylum seekers do apply for asylum or initiate the process of asylum at the border. And that is controversial just because the border is so inundated with immigrants trying to come in, and that has been worsened by the Title 42. Now, that law is a public health law that was put in place to protect the welfare of the public when it comes on to certain public health emergencies. Of course, the Trump administration used that to their advantage during the pandemic to then say that it would give them extensive discretion to turn people back, and they turned many people back at the border and forced them to stay in Mexico at their detriment to while they waited for their asylum claims to be heard. So that in itself is it's atrocious to think about, but that's exactly what's happening, and now it's set to end. And there are the Biden administration, we all are anticipating that the border will be inundated, and they are now trying to figure out how they're going to manage the number of people that will be seeking asylum at the border without the Title 42 in place. Now, when you are applying for asylum at the border, your claim will be assessed. So when you get to the border, one thing I want to let you know about is that whole process of getting to the border, usually the Mexican border, the border between Mexico and the United States. Now, when you get there, you can't just say, I want to come into the US, and they let you in. You have to have, some sort of legal basis to enter the country, like if you have a visa, if you have special permission, if you are applying even for parole, called humanitarian parole, where the officer can let you in based on a public interest or based on a humanitarian need. And then there's also asylum. So the officer, one thing that they do evaluate is whether you do have a good asylum claim. And so if they see or hear you say that you fear returning to your country, that you plan to apply for asylum, or that you do not that you have faced persecution in your country, or you fear persecution, that means certain harm in your country, then they will then pass you on to a process called the credible fair determination process, where they then determine whether you do have a solid claim. Would you qualify for asylum? And this is done in a credible, fair interview. This is usually done. So when you come in, sometimes if they do not find another reason to release you at that time, they will then hold you unless you waive a waiting period to do the credible, fair interview. They will have you in a facility, and then they will do a credible, fair interview. At the time that they do the credible fair interview, they're trying to determine that based on your claims, whether they can then move you on, recommend you to move on to an asylum process, which is called affirmative asylum at the USCIS. If they so and so they'll ask you questions, various questions, and if your fears are credible, meaning it's believable, this it's likely that this is something that can qualify for you for asylum, the officer will then recommend it for asylum and move it on to the USCIS. In some cases, if there's a negative on it, where the officer, there's a the officer does not find a credible fair doesn't make a credible fair determination, then what they will do is they will refer it to immigration court, or they may remove you or put you through expedited removal. Usually, if you do express the desire to have this opinion of the officer, the negative opinion, reviewed by an immigration judge, then it will go before the court. And how fast this happens depends on how inundated the judge is. Sometimes they will release you pending the immigration matter and the review of the IJ, or they could keep you detained for that period of time. It all depends on other factors. Whether they keep you detained, it comes down to a number of other factors. And some of these may include, are you traveling as a family? Are you sickly? Do you need assistance? Do you have relatives here that can serve as sponsors for you? At that point, at the point, there are three possibilities, right? So there's one, the officer does find a positive, so they do see that you have a credible, fair, case, and then they move it on to give you instructions, and they move it on to the USCIS. They refer it there, where you will have another interview with an asylum officer who will make the final determination. And that can take months to even years to get that interview. And you would be able to apply for a work permit while you're waiting. At that point, you have already met the deadline to apply for asylum, because if they're recommending it, that it is going to be considered by the asylum officer, then it is considered your asylum application. But be sure to check this. Make sure that your asylum application was formally submitted, because if not, and there's a misunderstanding, you could be in the situation where you didn't meet the deadline. So you want to be careful with that. When it goes before an immigration judge, you also want to make sure that you check that the court now has your asylum application, and that they have all they need. The IJ has all they need to make a final determination on your matter. Because at that point, once the judge makes that decision, you are then, and it's not in your favor, you will then be removed. So, who qualifies for asylum? Who is going to be likely to get through that credible, fair finding? Now, I think there is a certain level of misconception about who qualifies for asylum. So, keep in mind that asylum has a certain level of particularity to it. Just because you may have been robbed in your country does not mean that when you get to the border, you're going to get asylum. The reason being, it really is focused on your particular social group or your identity, and how that played into the harms that you faced or that you fear in your country. So if you have a fear of persecution, or you've experienced persecution because of your race, your nationality, your political opinion, a particular social group that you're a part of, then this could be a basis to apply for asylum. Now, when it comes on to, there's a catch all right here, right? So you have political opinion, religion, your national origin, and then also your race, right? If those are pretty clear cut, if you're facing persecution, certain harms, because of these types of groups that you, or this basis that you identify with, then you could qualify. I'm going to give you an example. So, for example, in Jamaica, there is a certain level of persecution against those who identify as gay, lesbian, transgender. And if they fall into that group, there may be a basis for asylum. The reason being, this is they are the member of a particular social group, and that though they are being targeted because of their characteristics that are either unchangeable, or they have a right to continue to be this way, but they're being forced to hide or change because of the overall belief of the country. And so, the groups are not protected in Jamaica, largely because the police is against the law. The police don't enforce, don't particularly protect against violence against these groups in the country. And so it is a good basis for asylum. And you've had many successes for asylum because of this type of persecution. Another is religion. So, if, for example, in a certain country, if you're the minority, so you're part of the minority in the country, and you may be a Muslim or you may be a Christian in the country, and you may have, you face certain threats, certain harms, certain dangers, you're targeted because of your identity as part of this religion, that you identify in this particular religious group. And so if and then let's talk about the catch-all, right? The particular social group. So first of all, identifying as gay, lesbian, transgender, LGBTQ, those that's a particular social group. But remember, it's not set in stone. Domestic violence is another one that comes up often, where women, maybe men, but generally we see this with women in certain countries, where they are seen as property, or they are not protected against domestic violence. And it is something that's it's pervasive, it's widely accepted. And even if there are laws against it, the police or the government don't enforce those laws, or they may not have laws in place at all. And so if you are someone you're in a marriage, you're unable to leave it because of this lack of protection, you're facing abuse, but you're unable to leave the violence, and you're continuously threatened by violence, then this could also be a basis for asylum. So it's very broad, and whether or not you qualify is really comes down to your particular circumstances. I mean, it is something that the asylum law is changing, and it changes as different groups come and seek asylum. For example, individuals may face a lot of harms in certain countries, because of their mental illness. And if that's the case, there is a basis based on a particular social group that involves being having a certain mental illness. And so if you are my rule of thumb here is, if you fear going back to your country, or you have to flee your country because you are going to be targeted based on your nationality, your ethnicity, your race, your political opinion, or any other particular social group that you're a part of, you could qualify for asylum. Another thing I want to mention is gang violence. That can be a basis for asylum as well. It goes back to a certain particularity related to the social group. But say, for example, you're the member of a family, and one of the members is, a community activist who is campaigning against the violence, the gang violence. And the activists could be considered part of a particular social group of activists that are being targeted in the country by gang members to stop them from advocating against the violence. So can family members. Family members can be a part of the social group if it can be shown that in the country they're not protected by the government, which includes the police, and that they're often targeted in addition to the activists. So it this is where you really should contact me to schedule your consultation. We will talk about what you're going through. What are your fears of returning to your country? And then we can determine whether you qualify for this relief. You should know that there is a deadline to apply. That deadline is 365 days. So you have up to 365 days after the date of your entry. This is where it's very important that you make sure you do have a formal application with the USCIS or before the immigration judge before that 365 days after your entry happens. Now, if that time passes, you do have to show that there were changes that caused the delay, and now, or that didn't exist before, that now allows you to apply for asylum, or that there were exceptional circumstances that cause a delay. But you still do have to show that you reasonably filed within a reasonable time after the deadline. So keep that deadline in mind. What are the benefits of asylum, right? So one thing is, my rule of thumb is, if you are afraid to return to your home country because of conditions, because of threats you face, then you should schedule an appointment. Let's talk about it. Now, also, if you are fleeing your country, or you have fled, and now perhaps you even came through the border, and now you're trying to figure out what the next step is, you should really, usually the officers have already advised you about asylum, but everything goes so quickly. A lot of people don't realize how important it is to meet deadlines, to make sure that you submit all the evidence, to make sure you've covered all your claims, and also to evaluate all the different ways that you qualify. So that's where it's important to schedule that appointment as well. Go ahead. The link is in the profile page. Go ahead, schedule that consultation, and we can talk about your process. Now, the benefits of asylum. You would be able, so the asylum can take anywhere from months to years, right? And so, while the benefit though is that while you're here, you can apply for your work permit. After 180 days of it pending, you can then apply for asylum. I mean, for your work permit that allows you to continue to work while you wait for your asylum process to be completed. So that's all the better to make sure that you figure out whether you qualify, file it, and get started right away. Of course, with competent and help of an experienced immigration attorney. Now, once you are granted asylum, you will be given certain years of asylum in the country, and after 1 year, you will be able to adjust status to permanent residence. And then after 5 years, you could become a U.S. citizen. So not only does asylum offer you a safe haven, but it also grants you the ability to achieve permanent residence in the United States and eventually citizenship over a period of 5 years. Or over a period anywhere from 5 years to 10 years to be able to get asylum. So it's well worth it to see if you qualify for this. Now I'm going to go ahead and answer questions. So go ahead, put your questions in the comments. I'm monitoring the chat on YouTube and Instagram. So don't hesitate to put your questions in the comments and I will answer. All right. So go ahead and put your questions in the comments. I'll be happy to answer any immigration questions you have. Hi there, Soul Traveler. I applied for VAWA CO9 more than 13 months. I never received EAD. So, I don't know what your case is, but you have to check with them to see what's the status of your matter. I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is because I'm not your attorney. I'm seeking legal advice to submit my immigration papers. Great, I'm here for you. Go ahead, call, schedule your appointment, and we can talk about it. All right. Hi there, Sky Dilton. Nice to see you. What if you're a witness to a crime? So if you're, Shante, if you're the witness to a crime in relation to asylum, there could be a basis for asylum, but that alone would not grant you any kind of asylum status. There are other types of visas, but it depends on the extent of your cooperation with law enforcement when it comes on to getting visas or getting status in the United States if you're the witness of a crime. If you're the witness of a crime and you're also the victim of a crime, then there's what's called the U visa, which does involve that in require that you have reported it to law enforcement. Now, if in regards to asylum, if you're the witness to a crime, then it certainly may be a basis to being the member of a particular social group, especially if witnesses, and this is where facts are very important, and the particularity of those facts will be very important because our witnesses often killed when they witness a crime. What crime were you the witness of? Were you the witness of gang violence? And does that particular gang relentlessly pursue witnesses? Did they go after you? These would be questions that we'd have to ask. And it really takes not only knowledge about your situation, but knowledge about what's the overall context in the country to determine whether this can be a basis for asylum. Good afternoon. Hi there. Would you be able to say what years currently they're on for the F3 category? So I don't have the particular year and month, but I do know overall it's taking about 12 years from filing. Hi there. Go ahead, put your questions in the comments. I'm here to answer those questions. Do you assist with visiting visa for Canada? No. So I am not a Canadian immigration attorney and I don't do Canadian. You'd have to seek out a Canadian immigration attorney for that. All right, so go ahead, keep putting those questions in the comments. I do have a little more time, so I'm going to wait for more questions to come in. Your questions can be anything immigration related. What I want to tell you is that if you want to go ahead and schedule an appointment, you can do that by going to the link in the profile. It's going to take you to the site where you're going to go ahead and you can go to the website. You can also schedule your own appointment and go ahead and do that. So go ahead and use those options. Plenty of options. All these options do, except for where you schedule it on your own, unless you need assistance. All of these options lead to the scheduling coordinators who will be happy to schedule you and put you in. Go ahead and get with me before the new year, so you can have a good start to the new year and you can hit the ground running. All right. Okay, so Sierra says the 12-year wait, they don't think it's accurate. Well, what I can tell you is if you want the particular month and year, go to the National Visa Bulletin and you can look at it there. Based on the month and year, it's taking about 12 years for the F3. Now, with the F3 category, if you're the married son or daughter of a U.S. citizen, that's where it's taking 12 years. So, but if you want the particular month and year, go ahead and check there. Now, as for the fact that you have been waiting over 12 years, remember that it's the timeline. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case for you. What is going on in your case that it's taking so long? Have you checked on the status? Have you contacted them? That's a whole other matter. But if you want to get that information, go to the National Visa Bulletin. All right. Okay, so I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'm going to call it a day. Go to the link in the profile, schedule your appointment, and then we can go ahead and talk about your particular circumstances. Asylum, another thing is it completely acceptable to go to the border and apply for asylum? Now, in the case where you have to go to the border and you have to say, I need safety, I need to get out of the situation, then that means that you it is completely acceptable, right? Uh, you your priority is your safety, your well-being, and that is what the U.S. is built on, right? The U.S. has taken in asylees. Many asylees have built this country, and so it's totally acceptable. Even though, yes, going to the border and that journey is daunting, I don't want you to have the misconception that it is something that's wrong. It's not wrong. The people that are there, that they are seeking safety, they have every right to seek that because it is legal. It is a part of American law that allows people to seek asylum and safety at the border. So don't think that you're in any way violating the law. Um, and I am hoping that the information that I have provided you today has given you some insight, though, as to how particular your claims need to be and what kinds of claims qualify you for this form of relief. Because it's not everyone that's going to come to the border that just wants to come will qualify. So, one thing I've heard is, oh my gosh, the crime is so bad in the country that I want asylum. It has to be a lot more particular than that. Because the reason that that is not a basis for asylum is because it's affecting everyone in the country. Remember that asylum is for particular social groups, or if you're being harmed, persecuted, threatened, killed, you're being locked up for other reasons like your religion, your national origin, your race, your political opinion, or your particular social group. So if that's the case, and you are in danger, you need the help, you want to seek safety, then by all means express that, make that clear at the border, because once you make that clear, they are going to hear you out. They're going to put you through a credible, fair interview, and then determine whether recommend you for asylum, or they're going to go ahead and even give you the chance to have this reviewed before an immigration judge. While it's totally lawful, I know it's not the easiest path. But however, when you're dealing with pursuing safety and security, it's not always easy to get to that destination too. So that's all the more why you should do it. You should make sure that you seek that safety if you're facing that imminent danger. All right. So thanks so much for your time. I will be back tomorrow at around noon. So go ahead and look out for me there. If you'd like to go ahead and schedule, go to the link in the profile and you will be able to schedule there. So on Instagram, go to the link in the profile. You'll click on the link. You can get to the website. You can schedule your own appointment. So there are different, multiple ways to get in touch, and everybody, the scheduling coordinators will help you, or you have a very simple online form that will help you to book your own appointment. So I'm hoping to speak with you soon. Thanks. Bye bye.